Picture this: a serial killer known for her brutal murders making headlines across the nation, and yet she isn't the typical suspect. She's a woman, Aileen Wuornos, often referred to as America's first female serial killer. Wuornos' infamy is rooted in her challenging the archetypal image of a serial killer. She wasn't your usual suspect, lurking in the shadows. She was a woman, a fact that sent shockwaves through the public psyche. Serial killers, as we've come to know them, are predominantly male, their crimes often steeped in a toxic brew of malevolence and misogyny. But Aileen Wuornos defied these stereotypes. Her story forced us to confront our preconceived notions about who could commit such heinous acts. So, who was Aileen Wuornos, and what led her down this dark path? As we delve into her life, we'll uncover the circumstances that shaped her, the crimes she committed, and the legacy she left behind. Born on February 29, 1956 in Rochester, Michigan, Aileen Wuornos' life was marked by hardship and tragedy from the start. Aileen's childhood was far from idyllic, marked by a series of unfortunate events that would shape her life. Her father, a convicted child molester, was incarcerated at the time of her birth and committed suicide in prison when Aileen was just 13 years old. Her mother, unable to cope, abandoned Aileen and her older brother when they were still infants, leaving them to be raised by their grandparents. Their grandparents' home was no sanctuary. Aileen's grandfather was a harsh and abusive man, and the home environment was volatile. This troubled upbringing laid the foundation for Aileen's future, a future marred by violence and crime. By the tender age of 11, Aileen was already engaging in dangerous behaviors, trading sexual favors for cigarettes and beer. This early exposure to exploitation was a grim foreshadowing of the life that awaited her. At 15, after the death of her grandmother, Aileen was thrown out of her grandfather's home, left to fend for herself on the winter streets of Michigan. The hardship didn't end there. A teenager, alone and pregnant, Aileen gave birth to a baby boy at a home for unwed mothers. The child was immediately put up for adoption, another profound loss in a life already filled with so much pain and rejection. These early experiences, filled with neglect, abuse, and abandonment, were the formative years of Aileen Wuornos. They were the years that shaped her, the years that pushed her to the margins of society, the years that set her on a path of desperation and survival, and ultimately, a path of murder. Aileen's story is not a justification for her later heinous crimes, but it does offer a sobering glimpse into the circumstances that can contribute to the making of a killer. It illustrates the devastating impact of a childhood marked by trauma and neglect. These early years were just the beginning of a life filled with struggle and crime for Aileen Wuornos. Aileen's life took a darker turn as she grew older, leading her down a path few women have ever tread. As a young adult, Aileen found herself adrift in a world that seemed to offer her little but hardship. To survive, she turned to a profession as old as time itself: prostitution. The highways of Florida became her hunting ground, her means of survival, and eventually her stage for a series of horrific crimes. Aileen's first known victim was Richard Mallory, a 51-year-old electronics store owner. He picked her up one fateful day in November of 1989, likely expecting nothing more than a brief encounter. Instead, he met a gruesome end. His body was found several weeks later, riddled with bullet wounds. Aileen had taken his car, his money, and ultimately, his life. But what drove Aileen to murder? Was it the result of her tumultuous upbringing, the years spent on the fringe of society, or perhaps something more sinister lurking within her? The answer may never be fully understood, but one thing is certain: Aileen's crimes were just beginning. Over the course of a single year, 6 more men would meet a similar fate, their lives cut short on the lonely highways of Florida. They were a diverse group: a sausage salesman, a retired merchant seaman, a former police chief. What they shared was the misfortune of crossing paths with Aileen. Each case followed a chillingly similar pattern. Aileen would lure her victims under the guise of offering sex for money. Then, at some point during their encounter, she would draw a .22 caliber pistol and fire. The men didn't stand a chance. As the body count rose, so too did the public's fear. Aileen's victims were seemingly random, their murders brutal and without apparent motive. The media dubbed her the Damsel of Death, a moniker as chilling as it was apartment yet. For all the terror she instilled, Aileen remained a paradox. She was a woman, a sex worker, a drifter, far from the typical profile of a serial killer. Yet she killed with a ruthlessness that rivaled any of her male counterparts. Aileen's story is not one of redemption or triumph over adversity. It's a tale of a life gone tragically wrong, of a woman who slipped through society's cracks and into infamy. Her story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the world we live in, the people we share it with, and the dark potential that lies within each of us. By the end of her murderous spree, Aileen Wuornos had killed 7 men. She had become a figure of dread, a name whispered with trepidation. She was a woman who had traversed a path of violence and despair, a path few women have ever tread. By 1989, Aileen Wuornos had become a name synonymous with fear and death. Between 1989 and 1990, 7 men met their end at the hands of Aileen Wuornos, a chilling period that saw a woman, often overlooked in the annals of crime, leaving behind a trail of blood that would shake the nation. Richard Mallory was the first. A 51-year-old electronics shop owner, he met Aileen in November of 1989. His abandoned car was found a few days later, and his body, riddled with 3 bullets, was discovered in a wooded area. Aileen claimed self-defense, alleging Mallory had attempted to assault her. Next was David Spears in May of 1990. A construction worker, Spears was found naked and lifeless along a highway, with 6 bullet wounds. His car was found abandoned over 40 miles away. Car Skadden, a rodeo worker, was victim number 3. His body was found in June, riddled with 9 bullet holes. His car was also found abandoned away from his body, a pattern that had started to emerge. Next was Peter Seams, a retired merchant seaman. He left for Arkansas in July 1990 and was never seen again. Troy Burris, a sausage salesman, was found deceased in August. 2 bullet wounds marked his demise, and his car was discovered over 50 miles away. Dick Humphreys, a retired U.S. Air Force major and former police chief, met his end in September. His body was discovered with 6 bullet holes, and his car was found abandoned. The final victim was Walter Antonio, a truck driver, found lifeless in November with 4 bullet holes. His car was found abandoned over 40 miles away. Aileen Wuornos' method was consistent and chilling. She would lure her victims with the promise of sex, then shoot them at point-blank range with a .22 caliber pistol. She would then rob her victims, take their cars, and abandon them miles away from the crime scene. As the body count grew, so did the pressure on law enforcement. A task force was put together to apprehend the mysterious killer. Ballistic evidence linked the murders, and the hunt for the perpetrator intensified. Eyewitness accounts pointed to a woman, a rare occurrence in such cases, leading investigators to Aileen Wuornos. Aileen's reign of terror finally came to an end in 1991, when she was arrested and charged with murder. The investigation had revealed a brutal series of killings, a blood trail that would forever mark the annals of American criminal history. The name Aileen Wuornos would henceforth be etched in the minds of all those who dared to delve into the dark world of true crime. Aileen Wuornos' trial was a media circus, with her status as a female serial killer drawing widespread attention. As the world watched, Aileen was put in the spotlight, her life and crimes laid bare for all to see. The trial began in early 1992, in the heat of the Florida sun. The prosecution had a mountain of evidence against Wuornos, including the personal items of her victims found in her possession, and more damningly, her own confession. The defense, on the other hand, had a challenging task ahead. They argued that Aileen was a product of her traumatic past, that she was mentally unstable, and that her actions were in self-defense against the men who had allegedly tried to sexually assault her. Yet the jury was not swayed. They saw a woman who had brutally ended the lives of 7 men, and they wanted justice. After a swift trial, Aileen Wuornos was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read out, a grim testament to the gravity of her crimes. Then came the sentencing. In a chilling moment, the judge sentenced Wuornos to death for each of her 7 murders. Her fate was sealed. She would be sent to Florida's death row, a waiting room for the condemned. Yet, in a twist, Wuornos seemed almost relieved at the sentence, as if she had been expecting it, preparing for it all along. She was quoted saying, "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day, with Jesus June 6th, like the movie Big Mothership and all. I'll be back." Fast forward 10 years to October 9th, 2002, Aileen Wuornos' final day arrived. She declined a last meal, instead opting for a cup of coffee. Her final words were a haunting echo of her earlier statement, "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock and I'll be back." Then, at 9:47 a.m., she was pronounced dead. With her execution, The dark tale of Aileen Wuornos came to a chilling close. But the story of Aileen Wuornos, the first female serial killer in American history, continues to reverberate. It's a stark reminder of the capacity for human darkness, but also a testament to the systemic failures that often precede such darkness. It's a tale of a woman who is both a victim and a perpetrator, a woman who challenged our understanding of what a serial killer can be. And as we delve deeper into the world of true crime, we continue to grapple with these complex, uncomfortable truths. Aileen Wuornos' story has left an indelible mark on American crime history. Her tale, fraught with violence and tragedy, has forced us to rethink our preconceptions about who a serial killer can be. As the first known female serial killer in America, Wuornos shattered the stereotype that such heinous acts were solely the domain of men. Her crimes rippled through the public consciousness, sparking fear and fascination in equal measure. The media, quick to seize on the shocking nature of her story, painted a picture of a monster, a woman driven to kill by her tumultuous past. Yet, some saw a different narrative, one of a victim turned predator, a woman pushed to the brink by a life of hardship and abuse. Wuornos' life and crimes have been the subject of numerous documentaries, books, and films, most notably the Academy Award-winning movie Monster, where Charlize Theron delivered a chilling portrayal of Wuornos that further etched her into the public consciousness. But beyond the media portrayal, Wuornos' legacy has had far-reaching implications on how we understand and approach the study of female criminals. Her case challenged the gender bias in criminology, prompting a deeper exploration into the motivations and psychological profiles of female killers. Her story, while disturbing, also shed light on societal issues such as homelessness, mental health, and the failures of the child welfare system. It forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about how society often fails its most vulnerable. Ultimately, Aileen Wuornos' legacy is a complex one. To some, she's a symbol of the depths to which human beings can sink when pushed to their limits. To others, she's a tragic figure, her life a stark reminder of the systemic failures that can lead individuals down a path of destruction. Aileen Wuornos' story is a dark chapter in our history, a reminder that evil can come in any form. The story of Aileen Wuornos is one that continues to intrigue and horrify us, even after all these years. It's a chilling reminder that anyone, regardless of gender, can descend into darkness given the right or perhaps wrong circumstances. Her tale, fraught with hardship, violence, and ultimately death, is a stark deviation from the typical narrative of serial killers. It's a narrative that forces us to rethink our preconceptions about who a serial killer can be, and it's a narrative that leaves us questioning the very nature of humanity itself. Yet, as haunting as it is, Wuornos' story is just one among countless others in the vast expanse of true crime. Each one a unique testament to the complexities and extremities of human behavior. So keep delving into these stories, keep probing, keep seeking answers. Remember, each story like Aileen's is a piece of the larger puzzle that is human behavior. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and let's continue this journey into the dark side of humanity together.